Hello and welcome to another video and another day here on the channel. Hey, if you've been watching and you're not subscribed, if you've been tracking with us for the last several days, definitely consider subscribing down below. You'll get content from me. You'll get reminders of things that are going live, the streams that we have every single day, additional videos and content that I put out as specials or breaking news or things like that, as well as just being a part of this community, being a part of the movement of educating, having real conversations, exercising our freedom of speech in a way that actually brings conversation to the table, in a way that brings discussion to the table versus just yelling at each other. I hope you never feel that way over here on this channel. But if you are not subscribed, definitely consider. I have clearly been saying stuff that is upsetting at least 4 people from this channel that chose to unsubscribe in the last 24 hours. It has been a busy week on this channel, and there's definitely a cleaning of house that's happening on my subscribers. So if you are watching this and you absolutely hate my guts and you never want to see another video again, then you might want to unsubscribe because then you won't get notifications. But if you do, hey, even if you do hate my guts and you are intrigued or interested or wanting to engage in a different perspective than maybe your own, consider subscribing. You'll get notifications of my awful, terrible videos. And if you are enjoying the content here, you like the come from the perspective that we're bringing, definitely consider subscribing. That's enough of the subscribing world. As promised, we've got some updates from the DNC. We're going to do more of an in-depth tomorrow and, of course, Friday as we get the full recap of everything that went down at the DNC. Lots of rioting. The rioting got pretty violent last night, a lot more violent than it has been the last couple days. Called it. I'm sad that I called it, but inevitably there's going to be a lot of hate, especially with what we've seen so far. In a lot of different situations, in a lot of different cities in the United States, there's been a lot of very, very violent pro-Hamas stuff going on in the world. So not surprising that it's happening in Chicago. But something that happened before the first evening of the DNC that people were just completely outraged about, which I am as well. And then some people were like, ooh, this is so exciting, yay, is that Planned Parenthood chose to bring one of their portable vans to the DNC, offering free vasectomies and free pill abortions for anyone that attended or was attending the DNC. Now, this may not be news to you. Many of you probably have already heard about this, but of course, in some ways, I'm not assuming that the people who view this video are necessarily engaged with as much news as I am keeping track of. So all of our sources, all of the information that we're going after, all of the things that we're looking at, all the things that I'm going to share today, which we have a lot to talk about today, all of that is in the description below. I want to be very transparent with you always when I'm talking about information that I'm receiving or journalism that I'm referencing or videos that I'm referencing. I'm going to give you those sources always because I want you to go do your own investigation. I want you to go and actually do your own searching and understanding of what's happening and making up your own decisions. If there's anything like, y'all, when it comes to education, when it comes to building our own perspectives and our own positions, I want nothing more than you to use your brain and use your critical thinking skills and make up your own decisions based on your worldview, based on your values, based on what you believe, and then making decisions that are informed by that. One of the things that is most dangerous about the world that we live in is flexible and constantly changing morality, which means essentially people can say something that you're like, I totally agree with you. And then the next minute they're off doing something else. In other words, there's not any consistency to what they're saying. We're going to talk about this when it comes to the political scheme, the political world as well. But that's a huge problem because you don't really understand what people believe because they're just constantly changing what they believe based on what benefits them. And so even if you and I disagree on our position, on our worldview, even if we disagree on our view of God, of our creator, even if we disagree on the party that we're associated with, or whatever that is. I want you to be able to learn to develop your own thoughts, your own perspectives, your own critical mind on discerning and investigating what is actually going on in the world and where you land on particular things based on the thoughtfulness that you put into investigating. That's why I leave all the sources in there. It's something that I will constantly remind you that it is important on this channel to always be transparent about where we're getting information. It also keeps me accountable. Like yesterday, I said that Biden's speech went for an hour and a half, and it actually didn't. It went for 45 minutes. So, you know what I mean? Like there's sometimes where I get it wrong. And I want to make sure that you guys have the information to actually decide for yourself where you stand on things. Okay. So we're going to go after this breakdown of what's happening in Chicago on the Planned Parenthood world. There's a lot of articles out there giving updates on what's happening in the Planned Parenthood department, on the portable van that is sitting outside the DNC offering free vasectomies and abortions to people who've attended the DNC. Blah. But this article is helpful. There's a lot of articles out there you can read from whatever bias you want to read from. This is Fox News because, hey, I'm pro-life, unequivocally pro-life, completely and totally pro-life and anti-killing babies. So I'm going to go for the more conservative perspective on this. We have 25 murdered children right now in Chicago because of a Planned Parenthood truck that is sitting outside the DNC offering free abortions to anyone who is attending the DNC. They were completely booked on appointments before the DNC day one evening even started. How sick is this? And obviously there was definitely some pro-lifers there interacting with them. I mean, this stuff is just shameful. It's so messed up. It clearly goes to show the angle that the Democratic Party is taking. And we're going to talk about this more because today we're going to dive into a deep analysis of all of our candidates, not just our Democratic and Republican candidate, but also our independent. What does RFK believe when it comes to abortions, pro-life, all of that? What does his running mate, Nicole Shanahan, believe as well? We've got some videos, we've got some articles. Again, all of that is referenced in the description below. And then we're obviously also going to dive into Vance and Trump and Waltz and Harris and what they believe. What are the potential consequences of each one getting into office? What are some of the things that might happen? And then also we're going to, that's kind of the wider picture of the presidential nominations and the presidential run. But then we're going to zoom down to what's happening on the local level. And this is going to be more of a call to you getting involved and engaged. It doesn't need to be from a political stance of, I need to have an opinion on everything political that's happening. But if you are someone who values and respects the sanctity of life in all circumstances, and you want to see some serious change in our country around our positioning and also our morals, our ethics, the way that we actually serve mothers and children and families as a whole, then this needs to matter to you. Like, I will not give anyone a pass for saying that they're pro-life and then doing absolutely nothing about the issue, doing absolutely nothing for mothers, for children, for serving, putting your time, putting your money. I don't care. It looks different and unique to each person. It's not about how, it's about if you care, if you communicate that you care about these things, then we get to put our money where our mouth is. We get to put our actual time and our resources where we say we believe, hey, this matters. And the more apathetic and disconnected Christians in particular get to the issues that have become a political issue that shouldn't have even been a political issue in the first place. Y'all, murdering children should not be a political issue. It should be a moral issue. It should not be we're going to throw that in the issue of like, don't get hung up on entertainment and politics. No, this is something that the church needs to care about. This is something that the individuals need to care about. This is something that we as Christians need to care about. And it's very sad to me. It's very sad to me because here in my local area, we're a highly Dutch Catholic area. We have a lot of Catholic churches here. And my Catholic friends have done a lot of really positive work towards pro-life activities, anti-abortion activities, and also just pro-mother activities, supporting with making sure that our local pregnancy care centers have support, and our non-denominational Christian spaces have also very much helped with pregnancy care centers. But Christians are becoming more and more disconnected and apathetic to what's happening. It's like we are getting more comfortable with the issue of abortion in our country and how that impacts on an individual level, on a local level, on a community level, and on the state and federal level. It's almost like we're so focused on the federal level, or we're not focused at all on any level. And this is communicating something really permanently painful to mothers and children. And it's also communicating something that the very, very far left liberal side of this argument saying, hey, there should be no limitations on abortion. You should be able to make a choice at any stage of your pregnancy because their rights don't get to undermine your autonomy, your body choices. And they should be able to do that at any time during the pregnancy. That is their position. And they're getting even more fuel and more fire by seeing Christians and conservatives being apathetic and disconnected to the actual people that are impacted and influenced by this issue, and just the laws or just the position or just the stance or just the argument. And so, y'all, there's my speech. Let's go. Again, 25 so far. I'm sure there's more. 25 children have been murdered so far at the DNC because of this Planned Parenthood truck hanging out, having a party in front of DNC. Y'all, this makes me not happy, but also just heartbroken, angry, sad, disgusted, disappointed, and also there's something else that we're gonna really pull through this thread, because I think that education has done a lot of brainwashing. It's done a huge disservice to the moral code of young people and Americans in general. So, my disgust is towards the fact that this can just exist, and be accepted and be celebrated and be promoted by a party running for president. But it also makes me very, very sad and communicates to me that there is a serious need for families and for the structure and the value of family to be reinstated and strengthened in our country. The fact that women feel like it's something to brag about, to promote, to be proud of, that they've murdered their child, that there's a reason. I mean, y'all, I have a disability. As far as I know, my birth mother was not intending to abort me if she knew that I had some type of disability, which, by the way, she did not know. As much as I know, that's not the case. And there are many, many young women like myself that never existed, that never lived in the real world because they were murdered by people who said, well, they won't have quality of life because they have a disability. They won't have the life that they deserve because of disability. And that is shameful. It's just selfish. It's absolutely selfish, clothed in selflessness. And it's a very, very sad but constantly pushed ideology on women that they need to stand up for themselves and take care of themselves and fight for themselves in this angry, resentful sort of way, that they're entitled to something that they're being pushed up against. And the reality is, like, when you come from that victim mentality, you open yourself up to being brainwashed, to being used and controlled by the people who are validating your victimhood. This is what we're seeing in the country so much through education, through culture, through music, through entertainment, and through politics. The people who are pushing for victim entitlement more are the people that are actually controlling those who feel like a victim. y'all. And that is absolutely a huge part of the undermining of sanctity of life, human life, being valued, being respected, along with and also with the mother, right? It's not one or the other. That's the whole argument. It's not one or the other, it's both mother and child. And so it's really, really sad and just horrid to see this being promoted and celebrated and almost, trivialized in the Chicago area for the DNC. Like, honestly, y'all, this is just a sneak peek, by the way. This is just a sneak peek of what we're going to see from the Democratic Party if they get in and be president of the United States and be the administration. Y'all, this is what we're going to see. So this is just a little sneak peek of what we're going to see, and we're going to talk about each of our candidates' positions. That's our independents, Nicole and RFK, Vance and Trump, Waltz and Harris. So that's where we're going to jump into now. We have videos, we have articles. Again, all of this is referenced in the description below, but I want to start with Nicole. We're going to go Nicole Shanahan, which is RFK's running mate. There's a lot that I like about Nicole and RFK when it comes to other things besides abortion. And I kind of want to, before we jump into these people, a lot of us are having huge question marks, huge struggles, a lot of tension, even within ourselves, about how do we vote this year? Because for so long, the main position that people either take strongly or don't take at all, or go the other way and say, hey, like swing the pendulum the other way, has been the abortion issue, right? Like, this has been a huge factor for a lot of people on either side, far left, far right, and all of us in between. This has been a huge factor in who we put into the White House. And so this year is really confusing for a lot of people, especially pro-life, sanctity of life people like me, like potentially you, if that's your position across from me, and lots of other people that I stand with and support and encourage. It's a huge, huge issue and a huge factor. And now it's sort of like, okay, wait a minute. Where do these people actually stand? How do we understand the consequences, the inevitable consequences that will happen when each of these people are in place? Now, I want to be really clear, just like I was saying yesterday. Consequences are an inevitable effect of a choice that you make. It doesn't mean that it's bad, it doesn't mean that it's good, but it means that you are responsible for the aftermath consequences of your choices. This is a huge thing when it comes to the issue of abortion that people don't want to look at. They want to look at it when it benefits them for someone else to pay the consequence of their choice. But if they don't want to pay for their choice, if they don't want to pay for the consequence, then they fight for, hey, you shouldn't have to pay the consequence of going and having sex with someone. You shouldn't pay the consequence of going and getting pregnant and then having this baby and suddenly being like, I don't want to have this baby, right? So a huge factor here in understanding how to determine each candidate, their position, their kind of coupled position, right? You have your president and your vice president for each of these three candidates that are running for president. What are their positions? What are the inevitable consequences of them being in the White House? What could we potentially see from their policies, from their positions, from the active, the actions that they could actually take, and their activist position on different issues? Some of them are very, very pro something, and then others are very, very moderate, sort of like whatever. So we're going to break this down because I think that a huge thing that's happening right now is that people just don't understand. There's a lack of clarity. And when there's a lack of clarity, there's overwhelm, and then there's detachment. So we end up detaching from the issue, detaching from the responsibility that we have as United States citizens. And then we become the ones that are like, well, I'm just not going to vote because the abortion issue, like, I don't really know where they all stand, but clearly none of them are totally pro-life, so I'm just not going to vote. Y'all, we got to understand not only the positive consequences that we perceive, but also the negative consequences. And I promise you, there are some serious negative consequences here that we've got to take a look at. So we're going to start with Nicole, and I want to share a a post that she brought up on X. She posted very clearly, one of the things that I really appreciate about our independent candidate, and I don't think that they should be dismissed. I definitely, like, early on, I very much did dismiss them because I bought into the idea that, like, the cynical idea that, well, an independent won't win, so who cares? But the reality is an independent may not win this year, and it's likely that an independent won't win this year. And we don't want to dismiss him and her. We don't want to pretend like they don't exist, because them flipping to either side, them dropping out of the race and being a part of the administration of either one of these parties, Trump's party, Harris's party, Republicans, Democrats, he absolutely does have influence. Him and his running mate, Nicole, absolutely have influence in this election. And so, we want to be vigilant and mindful of what position do they take, how radical are they on either side, and what does that actually mean when it comes to the inevitable result of them having a position in the administration and or winning the election. So Nicole posted here on X, here it is. And I'm going to read it for you. Obviously, you can see it on screen, but I want to read it for you because I think that this is very, very telling. There's been a lot of back and forth about where she stands and what she thinks. Initially, when I started researching about her, because I was very intrigued, to be honest, I hadn't heard anything about her. And then suddenly she started popping up on my feed, and I'm like, oh, Nicole, wow, she's like the running mate. She sounds cool. Initially, when I looked up her position on abortion, I thought, oh, she's pro-life. This is amazing. And then I read this, and this, well, you can make up your mind for yourself. People are asking about my views on abortion. This is Nicole on X that she posted this. Again, it's linked in the description down below. You can read along. You can go look at her other content there on X. People are asking about my views on abortion. I will speak personally. As a mom and a person with a womb, I don't like the feeling of anyone having control over my body. It is coercive. It is wrong. But I am also a woman that would not feel right terminating a viable life living inside of me, especially if I am both healthy and that baby is healthy. Oh, red flag, red flag, red flag. There's already a lot of very subjective, ambiguous messaging here that's very, very interesting, but we're going to talk more about it. I can hold both. Yes, especially if I am both healthy and that baby is healthy. I can hold both beliefs as someone who believes in the sacredness of life simultaneously. There are a number of extenuating circumstances that would lead me to consider terminating a pregnancy. Those include my health, the health of the baby, ding, 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 and considerations of what happens to that baby if that baby is being born into a situation that cannot sustain a good and healthy life. Now, you got to ask yourself, what defines a good and healthy life? What defines a healthy baby? What defines a healthy mother? And we don't know any of this. She's just throwing out words and we don't know what this means. We don't actually know what any of this means, but it sounds a lot like what I've been hearing from the Democrats, except for this, like, hey, I believe in the sanctity and sacredness of life, but I also believe that a woman can choose, and that here's all the exceptions. When I look at the health of a baby, I'm sure there are plenty of people that would have crossed me off on the list if they had seen me in an ultrasound and said, oh my goodness, she's going to need hip surgeries. She has knee issues and ankle issues, and she's going to have chronic pain and all this stuff. They likely would have X'd me out of the quality of life factor. And y'all, I have a serious quality of life, and I am very engaged in the world and love my life, and I am grateful to be alive. So who gets to judge what quality of life really means is a really big question that I had when I printed this off and wrote it down and had lots of red pen comments on it. So these include my health, the health of the baby, and considerations of what happens to that baby if the baby is being born into a situation that cannot sustain a good and healthy life. In the situation of economic considerations, I support bringing babies into the world through community support of both mother and baby. I agree. I think all mothers carrying a healthy baby want what is best for their baby. Let's help them do just that. Let's center the conversation and bring it back to the people. Bobby and I are dedicated to bringing the light solutions in the best interest of mother and baby. Here's a picture. She shows a picture on her thing. You can go check that out. This is just a screenshot of what she wrote on X. Now, there's a lot here. Her saying, I support bringing babies into the world through community support of both mother and baby. She is also leaving the father out of this, which is the family, right? You had sex with someone that brought this baby into the world. You created a baby with someone. So then the question is, where's the dad in this factor? And I don't know anything about her husband. I don't know, to be honest, I don't even know if she's married. I think so, but I don't know actually. But this is a huge factor in the sustainability of families and the sustainability of children in our current world. What we're seeing is a lot of fatherless children that are living in our country where the mother is having to work and try to parent and try to afford education and try to afford all the things of having a child. And there's a huge strain on families when the father is not present in the home. We're not talking about that here. She's not mentioning it at all. She's just saying, hey, the community should support both mother and baby. Do I think that the community, the local churches, the area should be supporting, single mothers, those who are in poverty, those who are disabled and struggling? I think that that's a huge gap that the church has chosen to just let go of and let it be. And the government has just swooped up and said, we'll do all these federal programs. We'll do all these federal, throwing out of money. But oh, wait, there's a lot of strings attached. And now we inevitably own you. Can you think about the amount of times that you've heard in the last several years that you've heard people say, well, I'm voting for this person because, they're promising a ton of things. They're promising money. They're promising a better economy. And while the economy is a huge factor and you being able to afford things is a huge factor, going off of the strings of, hey, I'm going to promise you this and I'm going to give you this, when it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. And so for a lot of these young single moms who are struggling and they're getting federal support, some of this federal support is very disingenuous because it ends up leaving, not only does it end up leaving these mothers in lots of strings that are attached and lots of, things that are leveraged against them because of their federal funding that they're receiving or any kind of federal support, but it also leaves mothers disconnected from their communities, disconnected from the relationships that they could lean on, disconnected from the support that they could actually give their children and also receive from their communities. So I think this is a huge issue on a local level where communities, neighbors, churches in those communities, we're the ones that should be joyfully supporting each other when there are needs, not from a place of forced coercion, but from a place of this is a choice that we're making to take care of our own, to take care of our people, to take care of our community. And to be honest, this is something that on the Democratic side, they've been really good about pushing. They've been really good about pushing unity and community. What do these things mean? Well, they actually mean a lot of twisted, messed up things to the Democrats. But when it comes to community and support of each other and taking care of each other, these are good things as long as we're not doing these things to end up bribing people or cheating people into some decision or, doing some type of thing where there's all these strings attached. I think a huge element that has continued to individualize and separate each other is this kind of manipulation that's happening around serving and supporting each other, feeling like, well, there's something in it for me, right? And if we're actually supporting communities, supporting mothers, supporting children from a place of this is our role as civilians, as citizens of the United States of America, this is our role for our community and our neighbors, and we do it joyfully, and we know that will end up coming back to create a stronger and healthier neighborhood, a stronger and healthier community. But at the end of the day, like having that joy and that community and that unity to support each other is beautiful. It's just that generally the people who are touting it the most without any viable, clear, specific description of what that really looks like is often saying it from a place of control, not genuine freedom. And again, we're going to talk about that as well, because it seems to me in a lot of the speeches that I've heard in the last couple of days from the DNC, there's a lot of yelling about, oh my goodness, our freedoms and our rights have been stripped from us. And these are all the awful things that have happened. And it's like, yo, we've actually had more abortions happen since the Dobbs case and the overturn of Roe v. Wade than we had when Roe v. Wade was in place. So you can't tell me that suddenly your rights are just removed and your quality of life is completely down because the Dobbs case and because some states are more conservative than others. That's been happening since the beginning. And if you don't like your state, why don't you move? But oh, wait, we can't move in the economy because the houses are way too expensive. And Harris and Biden have just completely mutilated our economy. But anyway, that's a different topic. So this is really Nicole's positioning. She's very, very focused on the woman's choice, that she is pro-life personally, but that it should be left up to the states and it should be left up to the individual women. This is a huge argument. There's a video link in the extra notes on this description down below. Go take a look at that after this video. That is an incredible video by Michael Knowles from the Daily Wire. He sits down and has a conversation with a pro-abortion activist, Bronte Remzik, and watch the whole video. It's over 2 hours. It's almost 2.5 hours. It is worth every second to watch, because listening to her perspective, her verbiage, her positioning, when she gets frustrated, and watching Michael's as well, because I think you got to watch it on both sides and notice what's really going on, what's underneath all of this, right? Like what's underneath the positioning. What's interesting is this gal, Bronte Remzik, she, by the way, I love her first name. I'm like, oh, are you named after the Bronte sisters? But anyway, her positioning on a woman's rights to use her body being put above the human life that she has chosen to create in her womb is very saddening, but it's also interesting to listen to her argument, to understand it at its core. And the deeper you get into the interview, the more you will understand the position that a lot of these pro-abortion, pro-murder, they call it pro-choice, a lot of these men and women and activists, like, what is going on in their brain? Why are they, like, how are they justifying their position? I think it's really important to understand the position of the other side, not from a place of you having to choose it morally, for you having to validate it or accept it, but understanding what's actually going on. Because if you start to understand people better, what are their decisions? What's actually happening? What's going on? Why do they feel the way they feel? Why are they, standing in the position that they're standing? All of that's incredibly important, not just for being able to engage with them in an educated, productive way, but productive also means meeting them where they're at, being compassionate and loving. I think a huge factor that pro-lifers are often dinged on when it comes to, pro-abortionists looking at us and engaging with us and interacting with us and commenting on us, is that we seem to be so obsessed with the legal issues. We seem to be so obsessed with the principle of it, but then we really lack any kind of commitment, compassion, or service to the practicalness of what's happening around mothers, women, children, and families. And I absolutely understand that. I absolutely recognize it as a huge thing that's lacking when it comes to the pro-life movement. It seems like people want to go to dinners and want to go to, meetings, and then everything in between is kind of lost on us, and the consequences end up being on the mothers and the children. And Michael Knowles definitely says in this interview, again, that's linked down below in the description, he definitely says, hey, like, I don't believe that it's good for the mother either. There's so much trauma that happens to the mother, especially when they're coerced. You can't tell me these pro-choice people aren't coercing women into getting abortions. That's absolutely not, like, that's absolutely happening. They always defend it. They're always like, no, 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 we're just giving them free access. We're giving them the choice for free access. But the reality is this is traumatic. It's traumatizing to the women who are actually getting abortions. I've spoken to many women who have gotten abortions, and every single one of them, regardless of their religion, regardless of their faith, regardless of their belief system, they have regrets. They have big regrets. They have depression, anxiety, loneliness, isolation. A lot of these women that are getting these abortions are also very, very isolated when they make these decisions. And that makes me very sad because we want to be promoting the life and choice of the mother and the child, right? By choosing to have your baby, even if you put it up for adoption, even if you're not, you can't afford or aren't at the space right now to have the child and keep the child, to being able to give that child to a family that is ready. I'm a huge benefit of that. I was adopted and my birth mother was very, very young. She was 16, 17 and couldn't take care of me, was not at the space that she could take care of me. And she chose a family for me that I am so blessed to be in. I cannot tell you how blessed, like, there's no words to describe how insanely blessed I am to have the family that I have. So you can't tell me that the only option to, taking care of the choices of the mother and the life of the mother is to murder their child. In some ways, I may be speaking to the choir right now because many of you who do follow me are conservative Christians, you are pro-life, but I don't think that we cannot get comfortable with this issue. We cannot get comfortable with our convictions, comfortable with our positions from a place of, well, this is the position I take and whatever. We've got to get to the heart of this issue. We've got to get to the singular person on this issue. Every single woman that we interact with, showing that love and compassion, showing that community support for them, regardless of if they choose to keep the baby or adopt it, whatever, right? Being able to support both the mother and the child, I think, is a huge, huge factor. Y'all, it is so important. This issue, if you feel like I'm harping on it, it's because I care so much and I see so many women get completely, like, just destroy their life over this decision, thinking that it's the only decision. And what's sad about this issue is that the loudest ones are the radicals who believe such evil, evil things and believe that it's totally okay. They acknowledge it's human life. They acknowledge it's a human being. And they say, you can't force me to remove my bodily autonomy, even though I chose to make a decision that would give me the inevitable consequence of a child in my womb, right? There are absolutely those people. And, a lot of times deep, deep down, they're coming from a lot of resentment and hurt themselves, but they are the ones that are the loudest. And there's a lot of people in between this issue that are just struggling and need people like you to come alongside them, to love them, to care for them, to really support them in seeing that they have a choice to choose life for themselves and their child. And there are a lot of people, we don't want to touch these issues because we think people are going to get so offended and angry. And there may be those people, take the risk. But there are a lot of women, a lot of couples, a lot of families that are making these decisions that don't feel strongly and angrily and resentfully for their position, but just are struggling with how to make it work, with how to move through the overwhelm and the discouragement and the depression that they're moving through. And this is why I think it's really, really important that we lean into the compassion, but also the clarity and the unwavering stance that the sanctity of life must be respected. And that respect is not just a passive, this is my stance, but that it is an active love and compassion and support for our neighbors and our community. There's going to be a lot of rants in between each of these positions, to be honest, y'all. Like, just get ready for it. I hope that this is firing you up in a way that you go and take action from a place of conviction, of love, of compassion, and also of, honesty and sincerity. I don't think it's beneficial to lie or deceive anyone in any way about this issue to make them feel better, to validate their feelings in the moment. Like, yes, we all have emotions, we all have feelings, we all have struggles. Don't dismiss them, but to validate them for the sake of murdering children is just not okay, y'all. It's just not okay. And this is kind of how I feel about Nicole's statement, to be honest. I like her on a lot of positions, but her positions on abortion are very confusing and vague and sort of they give me the vibes of like, you're just going to go with whatever benefits you and whatever benefits your people. That's kind of how it feels. Queen T Royal is here in the comments. Hello. Thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up for us and our work that we're doing over here. Love that you're here. Love that you're joining us. Yeah, so this is Nicole's position. I'm going to play a video really quick of her. She was doing an interview with Sage Spade. And she said some things that were really interesting. I think that she probably communicates her position and her compassion better via video, like in the way that she interacts with people. But again, right, like notice the behavior of people when they're with other people that may disagree with them. Notice how they are when they're with people that agree with them, and notice how they are when they're not sure where the other person stands. Because if people like we're coming right back to the very beginning the very beginning section that I talked through around be specific, be clear, like take a position, right? And I don't have positions on everything. I don't pretend to have positions on everything. There's lots of things that I could care less about. I don't feel strongly, or I'm just sort of like, I'm here, right? A lot of that is sports. I have very like neutral positions on sport. I'm like, okay, whatever, cool. Doesn't mean you're gonna have a position on everything, but if your morals are moving with the wind, then it makes it's exhausting. As someone who has been there and done that, having very flexible morality depending on who I was talking to, who I was interacting with. I just kind of was a chameleon moving around and agreeing with everybody. And it ended up being more exhausting than it wasn't, right? It ended up being more exhausting than the validation was worth, because when you don't actually stand anywhere and experience it's sort of like, I want you to think about if you've ever been to a beach. I'm going to give you a visual example of this. If you've ever been to a beach, especially like in the early spring here in Michigan, we have a gorgeous, gorgeous lake, beautiful beach. And there have been a couple times that I've lived here where I've gone to Lake Michigan in the early spring, like March, April, very cold and also very windy. So you take a parka, you guys, like you take a parka with you take a coat and you stand there. But it's so interesting because you're standing there and you're up against all of this wind. So you've got all the wind coming from the water towards land, right? You've got all of this wind coming at you. And it's such an interesting experience because in some ways you feel the pressure of the wind knocking at you and you being the thing that's not moving, right? Everything else around you is moving. The sand's moving, the grass is moving, you're not moving. So you're going to experience some resistance from the wind against you. But there's something else that happens that's really, really interesting. And that is there's this lightness that starts to happen as you're propped up by the wind. So I have like a slouching thing, and some of it is because of my hands, because my arms are shorter than yours probably. And I don't have elbows, so I don't have that resting ability to like rest comfortably and also have good posture. So I'm always like having to remind myself about my posture because it's a conscious choice that I have to make. But when I'm at the beach and the wind is coming in, it's like it naturally pulls you up. So while there is resistance coming at you by taking a stand, by having a worldview, by having a position that you hold firmly, and everything else around you is moving, right? And those are all the issues that are they're not as like firm, right? They're things that can change and adjust. But while there is resistance, there's also strength that happens because you're being propped up. You're being supported by the strength that's being built and the resistance that's being built and the resilience that is inevitably being created. I hope that that's not too poetry like. I mean, I hope that gives you kind of a good visual. There's a confidence that you build when you can actually stand firmly on a position, when you can talk to people and you can walk away and you walked away not agreeing, but still be able to hold firmly and thoughtfully the position that you hold. And that better be something that matters to you. It better be something that matters more than just your thought for the morning, right? There's lots of things that I think and then I change my mind. But there are certain things that I hold firm. And by building the resiliency that inevitably comes when you hold that position is something that no one can take away from you, right? So learning how to have conversations and how to talk honestly about things and how to agree to disagree and still be respectful and kind is such an important thing to learn. And for the people who are moving all over the place, your morals are moving all over the place, you're doing whatever people want to hear from you, you end up creating more and more heaviness and weight and man, like it's kind of depressing. It's really depressing in the long run to be the person that agrees with everybody and yet lives for nothing because you're just going with the flow. You're going with everybody. I see some of that from Donald Trump and Vance in particular, and we're going to talk about that. There's definitely a like what the people want kind of mentality. But when it comes to Nicole and RFK, and we're going to get to RFK, but when it comes to Nicole, that's kind of the position that I take on her. She's sort of like, well. I think probably personally, she's very pro-life personally, but if you go and watch that video from Michael Knowles, you'll hear this conversation and this debate really unfold around, do I have the right to have an opinion about someone else, about how people should be? Do I have the right to have opinions about things other than my body, my personhood? And the left would say, no, you don't. You can have an opinion, but you don't have the right to enforce that opinion. You don't have the right to actually have any kind of influence on the other person based on that opinion. You can have your opinion, but keep it to yourself. And, you have the right to choose for yourself, but you don't have the right to influence or choose other people. And choose for other people. And what's interesting about that is that's really what I hear from Nicole, which is, I believe in a sacredness of life, but I'm not actually going to work at standing for a world where that is the reality, where other people also believe that, right? And it's kind of sad. So anyway, that's Nicole. I like her on a lot of positions, but when it comes to abortion, she's, some of this ambiguity is more dangerous than the clear positions on either side. Sometimes this like in or out is more concerning to me. Now, let's listen to this video. Oh, I waited too long. Hang on one second. Let me add this video. Y'all, sometimes when I add these videos too early, they just die on me.
Honestly, people like me really, really struggle with. And at the end of the day, it's interesting, the political side of it, because you have one side that says, okay, do what you want up until birth and maybe even after. Do whatever you want. Yeah. And then you have the pro-life side that says never, never, never. I believe Nikki Haley said on the floor at the Milwaukee, that first Republican debate, maybe it was the second one, but when she said, listen, we have to find somewhere in the middle, because the conservative side is never going to agree with full on go for it, kill everybody. Yeah. And of course vice versa, where we say there's no abortion. And so what is that middle ground? To me though, I spoke to Bobby about this, and at the end of the day, he says, yes, this is a woman's choice, period. And I said, even up till birth? And yes was his answer. And so to me, yeah.
Now I want to pause here because literally, like, she literally, this, by the way, this is Sage Spade, who's interviewing. We've only heard from her. We haven't heard from Nicole yet, but Nicole is going to respond. Sage literally, we're going to kill everybody. You know what I mean? Like, she's literally acknowledging that it is murder. We're talking about murder. We're talking about, should murder be legal or not, right? That's essentially what we're talking about. And when we're talking about it from that plainness, which I think, to be honest, like, as I've been someone who's been very, very involved and very engaged in this topic for a long time and in the practicalness of it in the world, we're becoming more unashamedly obvious about the fact that we are murdering a human life. It is a human life, but it doesn't get to trump our bodily autonomy. So we are talking about, is murdering children okay? And she even, I'm like, the guts of actually saying murder everybody, you know, kill everybody, is just mind-blowing to me. But anyway, Nicole is now going to speak.
No, it's like, it's always a woman's choice. It's always a woman's choice, even up
This
to.
is why I think women need to be having this conversation.
Women are, but and we are, and that's why you're a vice presidential candidate. But so far, listen, whether it's Biden, Trump, who's been in office before, obviously women are considered and part of these discussions. However, it's too late. It's already political. So what do we do to try to find that middle ground? Because neither side is going to agree to the opposite extreme. So how do we come into the middle? Because I'm not voting for anybody who says go for it up till birth.
No,
I won't do that.
No. And that is not Bobby's position as I understand it. My understanding with Bobby's position is that, you know, every abortion is a tragedy.
Yes.
Is a loss of life. My understanding is that he absolutely believes in limits on abortion. And we've talked about this. I do not think, I don't know where that came from.
He just very clearly said, because I pushed, and I'm like, wait, up till, he said, it should always be a woman's choice, always, even up until that moment. And that is where anyone who says that, well, you're going to lose a lot of people, because that full term option is something that that is just scary.
Well, here's my understanding on his position. That is not my understanding of his position, and I think maybe there was a miscommunication there. But I think what he's saying is that it should always feel like a woman's choice.
Yes, sure.
To the final moment, right? Because if you're forcing a woman to have a baby, that is a very painful situation for that woman to be in. What you need to do is create an environment in which that woman realizes this is a beautiful opportunity to become a mom and to welcome a new life into this world, and that it is the most sacred, wonderful thing. And the only way you're going to get there is if we stop terrifying women because they're feeling like they're unable to step into that role of motherhood, or because they're fearful of giving birth. Because I mean, I remember I was terrified that moment leading up to having my daughter. It's like so scary.
Crazy.
So when you put in these resources that make you realize this is like one of the most spiritual, beautiful experiences you're ever going to have in life, and you look around your healthcare and you're like, I trust you to bring this. I trust you to keep me alive as I go through this tantamount experience. And you know, this is going to be full of beauty, and you are supported as a mother. I think that's what Bobby means. I think Bobby means, you know, it should always feel like you're moving into this moment on your own accord.
It's funny because I know that she says it must have been a miscommunication, but honestly, Kennedy's come out multiple times and said very specific things about where he stands. And I do agree with this in the sense of, like, there is a lot of, again, this goes right back to what I was saying before, which is like, mothers need to feel supported. They need to have support. And I want to get away from the verbiage of feelings, because if you talk to any mother who is during her pregnancy term, the season of pregnancy that she goes through, there are going to be seasons where she does not feel supported, where she feels like she feels awful, she feels discouraged, she feels emotional, all of those things. And then there's going to be times where she feels like this is the most amazing experience ever, right? You talk to any mother. I talk to mothers every single day. Mothers are like, I love mothers. They're always coming to me, and I'm always finding them. Having these conversations with mothers, understanding the ups and downs of how they feel, that's inevitable. There's going to be seasons of discouragement and sadness and feeling isolated and feeling I'm all alone. And we get to make sure that mothers are supported, that they have support systems, that they have the opportunity to have people around them that care about them, that can take care of them, their healthcare providers, their doctors, their nurses, their family, their community. This is truly like what's genuinely lacking in this issue of taking care of mothers and taking care of children is the taking care of part, is the serving part, is the loving part. This has become a political issue because the radicals on both sides have gotten angry enough and have found an agenda to go, chase away like a dog with a bone. And they have their own secret and not so secret agendas of why they're pushing those things and why they're being control freaks on either side of the issue. But when it comes to the practicalness of this actually happening in real life in communities with mothers who are scared to be a mother, who are scared to bring a child into the world, whether they're choosing to keep it or not, whether they're choosing to give it away and have it be adopted into a family that loves and supports them and cares for them, or they're choosing to keep that child and be the mother actively, not only during that pregnancy, but also into their actual life. That is absolutely their choice, and there's support systems for both places. But what I do agree with Nicole on the sense that there are a lot of mothers, I'm sure, that are not supported. It's not just how they feel, they're not supported. And that is a huge issue, especially for those of us who are conservative, who are pro-life. Y'all, we get like an F- on that one, because there's so much pushing for the legislation on this stuff, but then the practicalness of making sure that mothers are supported is not, like, we lack on that big time. And there are people, shout out to the pregnancy care centers. I personally know people who own and work at pregnancy care centers, volunteer at pregnancy care centers. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And there gets to be more support, not just organized support, but an individual desire. If you say that you're pro-life and you're not being pro-life in the world, then you're not pro-life. You're truly not pro-life. If you're not being pro-life in the world, if you're not serving, supporting, engaging, and that can look a lot of different ways. You can be creative in how you do that. But if we're just showing up at the banquets and the dinners, and then we're walking away and we're forgetting about why we actually care about this, then shame on us. Shame on us for being that way. Y'all, like, so I get what she's saying. I don't agree that it has any factors, any excuses, that none of the things that she's saying make it excusable to abort a child. The health of, just like we were talking about in her statement on X, the health and happiness of the child, the projected anticipated health or happiness of the child is the factor of bringing them into the world or aborting them. Yeah, could have been that person. Maybe you could have been that person too, right? It's like, when you think about that, who gets to decide what a healthy, happy child will be? And whoever is pulling the trigger on that, which right now it's the far, far left liberals that are saying, we're not just going to reinstate Roe v. Wade, we're actually going to make it illegal for states to have any limits on abortion, Like, these are the people that are pulling the trigger. These are the people that are getting to decide whether you're healthy or happy or not. And they're the ones that are influencing and brainwashing mothers and future mothers in deciding that their child is, not going to be healthy or happy. Who gets to decide that for somebody, which is wild. Yeah. So there's Nicole. I feel a little bit bad just because I do like her on a lot of positions, but this is about abortion and she anyway. So we're going to jump to RFK because in a lot of ways he's very similar. But yeah, he's kind of similar. So let me share that. Here we go. This is RFK's response. By the way, some of our we'll get into it. Vance has been very specific about the Trump administration's position. I actually pulled some articles when he was a senator, because I was like, hey, what did you think before you said, yes, I'm going to be Trump's running mate? Because I keep hearing Trump's administration, Trump believes this, we believe that. I'm like, what do you think? One of the things that I very much appreciate about Nicole is she has her own brain. She speaks for herself. She doesn't feel like she has to speak on behalf of the administration. She has her own position. And I do respect that, because that shows me some character and it shows me some individuality that she would have in bringing that to the White House. She wouldn't just be RFK Jr.'s sidekick that just nods her head at everything that he does, but that she has her own positions and has her own thoughts and perspectives. Okay. So Kennedy, here we go. Abortion has been a notoriously divisive issue in America, but actually I see an emerging consensus that abortion should be legal up until a certain number of weeks and restricted thereafter. Even in the reddest of red states, voters reject total abortion bans. And in blue states, almost no one supports third trimester abortion except to save the life of the mother. And so I support the emerging consensus that abortion should be unrestricted up until a certain point. But I also believe that we can reduce more abortions in America by choice than by force. This is at the heart of the more choices, more life policy we've developed. Every abortion is a tragedy, and by better supporting mothers, parents, and families, we can dramatically reduce abortions across the board. Again, it's like, why do we have to trade? Y'all, why do we have to trade one for the other here? Why do we have to trade having a very clear stance, a very clear position without exception, being pro-life, for being pro-family or actually taking care of people? Why is it feels to me like all of these people are sort of like, yeah, we're going with the people's consensus on this. We're going to say, human life gets to live if it's up until this certain point, and all of these exceptions also apply. But we're also going to be more choices, more life, more family. We're going to be, we're going to be pro-family. We're going to take care of people. We're going to reduce abortions that way. It feels like a cop-out to me, to be honest. Like a real cop-out. And I actually think, to be clear, I actually think Kennedy and Nicole are probably, I think they would actually be the most, at this point, I actually think that they would be the most pro-life position, even over Trump and Vance. I think Trump and Vance wouldn't do anything. It's hard to tell what Kennedy's actual active positioning would be on this when it comes to being in the White House and policy. And, some people don't actually realize this, but one of the biggest ways that an administration has influence over policies, over laws getting passed in the Senate and Congress, is by nominating, right? By promoting people, by promoting elected officials or officials that are in the process of getting elected to the Supreme Court, to being a judge, to being a circuit judge, to being, in a position of authority, in a position of making laws, making policies, et cetera, things like that. And also on the local and state level, right? So there's a lot of money that's being thrown at either candidate by, on behalf of the Democratic Party, on behalf of the Republican Party. And so this is very much like, even like local Congress, state Congress and state Senate, and then, federal Congress and federal Senate, even especially in the state, we see a lot of money from DC. We see a lot of money from the bigger departments trying to get their people in to make these policy changes. So when people say, well, the president shouldn't get thrown under the bus for the policies that are put into place or the laws that happen, it's like, y'all, I don't think we realize how much of an influence that the administration has on a lot of different factors that are happening in the Senate, in the Congress, locally, statewide, and federal wide. Even if it's not a direct jurisdiction, right? Even if it's not a direct, I can change this thing by choosing it, right? Sometimes it's the influence, it's throwing money at things, it's, nominating people, promoting people, things like that. So that happens a lot. And so, it's interesting to see how their position may change, may adjust. I don't know. We're going to find out. But my understanding is that, Bobby and Nicole are probably very similar in their position. They've definitely come out and sort of been like, there's got to be miscommunication on this issue. Nicole definitely seems to be a lot more conservative just in her own personal opinions on this issue, which I think obviously your personal opinions are always your own personal bias is always going to influence the way that you perceive and experience and discern through things. So it's definitely not something to like dismiss. It's definitely something to understand. I think, we see that a lot in the nominations in the Senate when they're doing interviews and they're doing interrogations, because they often feel like that. They're always asking, like, you've done past work on these issues, so what's your personal stance? And they always want to wiggle out of it. Like, my personal stance doesn't have anything to do with how I will judge and how I'll discern through things and how I'll enact the law. And it's like, yeah, it will, because everybody has a bias. So I don't know. We're going to find out how the independents run on this issue, but that's a lot of the information that I found on both of them. And they both are like, we're pro-family and pro-life and pro-choice. Wink, wink. And it's a little bit like, okay, where do you actually stand, y'all? You're being way too ambiguous and way too vague about your stance and your position. And it ends up being more concerning to me than even somebody who's like, full on pro-choice, because at least I know where they are. Pro-abortion, at least I know what position they're in. At least I know where they stand and what they actually mean when they say that, versus people who are like, well, this is what the people want. This is what the people want. Therefore, this is what I want. And that can constantly change and constantly move. There's absolutely something to be said about being able to listen and understand what people want, what people need, what the needs are. And that is the difference between looking at this as a political issue and looking at this as a moral issue, we are murdering children, right? So that's the huge factor here. It's like, if only we could distinguish between this being a moral issue and this being a political issue, because that's why we're having so many problems with this issue. And it's why it keeps coming back around again, y'all. Because it's not a political issue and it's being treated like one. It is a moral issue. It is an issue of either it is lawful to do or it is unlawful to do. And that is based on a moral code. It's based on a moral and ethic code, not a political code. And all of the rest of the issues that are happening, the economy, the environment, all these things, yes, absolutely. Understand, what are your people, the people that you represent, what do they need? What do they want? What do they believe? What is their positioning? What matters to them? What are their priorities? And when I hear these politicians say things like, we're listening to the people, we're listening to people on this moral issue that is murder, I'm like, y'all, of course there's going to be people who want to have the excuse of making a bad choice and then not wanting the consequence of it, or making a choice that they perceive as bad and then not wanting to experience the consequence of it, wanting to get out of jail free. Y'all, really frustrating. Okay, so we've gone through the first. We're gonna, Vance and Trump have been pretty open and obvious about their positions. We're gonna run through this pretty quickly. We have a lot more that we're going to talk through around Waltz and Harris. So I want to get moving because we're already into this about an hour. Okay, I'm going to share a video of VANCE.
Who supported the Supreme Court ruling recently on mifepristone, the so-called abortion pill, that ruled opponents lacked the legal right to sue over the FDA approval.
That's right.
This drug is used in like 60% of all abortions in the United States. In a Trump-Vance administration, would you use the FDA to block access to this drug?
Well, no. What the president has said very clearly is that abortion policy should be made by the states, right? You, of course, want to make sure that any medicine is safe, that it's prescribed in the right way, and so forth. But the president wants individual states to make these decisions because, look, Margaret, California is going to have a different abortion policy from Ohio, which is going to have a different abortion policy from Alabama.
But that was actually different because after Dobbs, the Supreme Court took up this case.
Yeah, but like
they
you said,
viewed it as different.
Sure, but like you said, on a matter of legal standing. But I think that what we really want is when states and voters in those states make decisions, we of course want the states and the federal government to respect those decisions. And that's what President Trump has said is consistently, we need to get out of the culture war side of the abortion issue. We need to let the states decide their specific abortion policy. And look, what President Trump and I want to do on family policy is make it easier for families to start in the first place.
So
they go for a while. And again, this full video is out there in the description below. So you can go watch the full interview. I also have a time code of when this particular section starts. So you can go take a look at that as well. It's interesting. Vance's position is interesting. Again, I wanted to go look to see, okay, where was his position before he said yes to being the VP? And what's interesting, I'm going to read it to you because, hi, dude. Okay. Really, really bad picture of him on the share. I want to share an article that was written when he was a senator, when he was running to be a senator. And I think this is really helpful because when you can understand their position before they get hired to be the vice president of the United States, kind of helps you understand the track record, their positioning before. I wanted to know, like, is he pro-life or is he not? And the truth is, again, just like everybody else, he's pro-life for himself and pro-choice for everybody else. In other words, we've gotten into this environment where tolerance means I can only have opinions about myself. I can only make choices about myself. And I don't have the right, and it is judgy, and it is wrong, and it is impolite, and it is racist and discriminatory to have opinions about other people's morals, especially when it comes to laws and policies in our own country. And y'all, this is running rampant in our politicians right now. So listen, for every single one of them, this is the case. And for the Harris and Waltz administration, it is even more evil. So just wait. You may be like depressed right now that none of our people are pro-life, but the reality is we got to understand none of them are pro-life. All of them, they may be personally pro-life. That really makes no difference in how their actual policies run because they're already making the distinction about like, this is my positioning for myself, but I'm not going to enforce it. I'm not going to propose positioning. I'm not going to propose policies. I'm not going to propose laws for other people to have the same moral code as me. And so eventually, inevitably that shows you how they're actually going to do their job as the president or vice president of the United States. So Vance has a pretty vague positioning in this is the Cincinnati.com, The Inquirer. Vance says, I'd like this to be a primarily state issue. Ohio is going to want to have a different abortion policy from California, from New York, and I think that's reasonable. I want Ohio to be able to make its own decisions, and I want Ohio's elected legislator to make those decisions. But I think it's fine to sort of set some kind of minimum national standard. He didn't say anything about that more so. That's kind of what he said. Now, Trump is interesting because he's been pretty clear. Again, I'm going to read this. I'm not going to show a video because we are running out of time very quickly here. But what's interesting about Trump is he's been pretty he's kind of taken this position of like, I did what the people wanted me to do. This is what the people wanted. So it's like, okay, what is your position? Like he's never actually even at the beginning of his first run for president, everybody thought he was pro-life, but it was sort of like, this is what my party wants. This is what we're going after. And then this time around, he's been way more reserved and way more tolerant, should I say, of the pro-choice. He's even been using their verbiage. If you didn't see, the RNC changed their positioning and their phrasing on abortion. Now they went from like 2 pages almost of comments on their positioning of abortion and against abortion. They went from almost 2 pages, y'all, to 1 paragraph. And it is the most vague thing I've ever seen in my life. It's really, really lame. And it's obviously clear, Trump is the RNC pick. He is the person representing the Republican National Convention, and the Republicans at large. And he kind of has a similar position to even RFK, which is sort of like, hey, it's going to be a state issue. Now, I will say the one thing that is really interesting is that RFK has actually been more specific about the like, all things should be like at a certain limit when it comes to abortion taking place. Like there should be a cutoff point, right? RFK has been pretty much like that, where Trump has been very like, hey, we're going to leave it to the states. I did that for you. You're welcome. We're going to leave it to the states and let them decide. And so it's hard to tell if that is a good thing or a bad thing between the two of them, because again, you're either going to have limits that are put on one side that cancel out the ultra conservative states that have very, very, very strong regulations and limits to abortion. You're either going to make them more liberal and then sacrifice that for states that are more liberal being less liberal and more conservative in their limits and make that a federal thing. Or you're going to have Trump, which is sort of like, hey, I did what I did. Moving on. Let's move on. He literally said in one of his press meetings, he's like, abortion isn't really a factor anymore in the election. Like, moving on, guys. And I'm like, yeah, well, it's not a factor for the conservatives because there's nobody who's pro-life, but I better believe you, baby. Waltz and Harris have a huge, huge element of pro-abortion, pro a national ban on any state that would enforce any kind of limit on abortion. Y'all, this is worse than even Roe v. Wade. I got to tell you, it's gonna get really, really ugly in here if Harris and Waltz get in. So Trump is sort of like, and RFK is sort of like, maybe there should be limits or there should be, but we don't know, we don't know what that means, and that can get messy very quickly. That can actually become a real problem. So there's concerns there for sure. So Trump is sort of like, let's leave it. RFK is like, maybe we should have some type of limits on all states. And then you got Harris and Waltz. Let's play this clip of Waltz. And bringing back the video.
Old enough to remember when it was Republicans who were talking about freedom. It turns out now what they meant was the government should be free to invade your doctor's office. In Minnesota, we respect our neighbors and their personal choices that they make. Even if we wouldn't make the same choice for ourselves, there's a golden rule. Mind your own business.
Yeah, let's just pause it right there. Let's look at that face paused right there. Wah! So, respecting people's choices, that sounds good in theory. Minnesota has been one of the most progressive anti anti-pregnancy care centers. They've done so much damage to the pregnancy care centers there. They've been pulling funding, suing, all these crazy things. Very, very progressive, very pro-abortion. Waltz has been, in fact, that there are rumors that that's a huge reason why Harris even picked him, was because of his very, very progressive pro-abortion positions. What's interesting is I actually haven't heard a ton about his abortion positions until I investigated in the last 24-ish hours. And what's interesting is there's a lot that he has been involved in around pro-abortion in his state. Again, one of the most progressive states for abortions, including protection for people leaving the state to have abortions other places. They've been busy over there, and didn't see a lot of that because he's so unserious whenever he's anywhere. He's so unserious. So it's hard to even know where his positions are. Is he just like a copycat of Harris? But he is very, very progressive. He's very, very dangerous. I say that not in a dramatic way. I mean that he is the whole idea. What's so mind-boggling about the Democrats is that they promote all of the things that sound good, right? That we actually lack in our country often, which is, choice often is lacking in our country. I don't think that it should be a choice that we make to murder children. But when it comes to choices and options for education, options for, medical options, things like this, there's a lot of areas where things are regulated and controlled. And so more control from the government is definitely not what we're looking for. But these people who are actually like their policies, their positions, their past positions obviously Waltz as a governor, Harris as a senator, and her past experience as attorney general, like there are a lot of positions and past choices that these people have made that insinuate that they're not going for less control, they're going for more control. And yet they're the ones that are saying freedom, 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 even though that's not actually what that's going to look like. So they're saying all the things that people want to hear. It's a great marketing scam. But what it actually looks like is more control on businesses, more control on families, more control on education, more control on the ideology that you are allowed to present in your communities and your areas, more control on churches, more control on religion, more control on where our taxpayer money is going and where it's promoting murdering children and paying for liberal education and brainwashing kids. Like, it's just, y'all, it's going to be more control, not less. And they're the ones that are talking a big talk about freedom, about rights, about neighborliness. Y'all, it's messed up. So Waltz is a joke. But then Harris, here's this video of Harris, which I'm going to anticipate that this one won't work. So I'm going to share the original version. Again, all of these things are in the description
does not
below.
have to abandon their faith, right? Their faith or their deeply held beliefs to agree the government should not be telling that woman what to do with her body. Mm-hmm. This evokes, in my mind, very fundamental rights, including the right to freedom for each individual to make a decision about what is in their best interest, the best interest of their family. And if they choose, make that decision with their priest or their pastor or their rabbi. But the government should not be making this decision. Mm-hmm. On the mifepristone issue, it's politicians finding a court, targeting a specific court that they thought would be helpful to them, to take a medication off the market which was approved 20 years ago by the Federal Drug Administration. Yes. Think about that. I'd ask anybody to look in their medicine cabinet, and any drug that you have prescribed by a doctor to alleviate your pain or extend the quality of your life, has been FDA approved. And arguably what they're doing with mifepristone could happen to any one of those drugs in your medicine cabinet.
Oh, I am totally muted. Okay, we're going to start over. What's interesting about Harris is that she's been made fun of big time for her word salad-ness, for her complete incoherence of whatever it is that she's saying, that she's really saying nothing, right? This has been like a huge, huge thing that a lot of people have gone after her for. What's interesting is to watch her when she actually has a topic that she has an opinion about, when she's actually being honest and direct about what she's saying. I believe that Harris is a very smart woman. I think that she has opinions, very, very, very strong opinions on lots of things. And a lot of her word salad is just her blatantly lied. She's a bad liar. She's clearly a very, very bad liar. And everybody sees it as word salad. So people are making fun of her for being what they call stupid. I don't think it's stupid. I think it's a strategy. I think she genuinely is just lying her face off about all of this stuff. And then we're going to find out her real policies when she's the president of the United States. That's what's going to happen. But when it comes to positions that she actually is clear on, like we should murder babies and it'd be okay, and call it pro-choice and pro-bodily autonomy for women, she's very clear. Did you hear her in this video? She's very clear. She speaks very plainly and clearly in this video. So the fact that she can speak very clearly and plainly about abortion, but really has nothing of substance to say about the economy, has nothing of substance to say about education, has nothing of substance to say about all of these other issues that she's being asked about, and she's revealing weird policies on that aren't really policies at all, just tells you that she's not stupid. She's just lying her face off about all the things that she knows people really care about. And then for the things that she knows she can get off the hook from, which is abortion, a lot of people are fighting for the reinstatement of Roe v. Wade plus some. She's very obvious. She's very clear. She's very direct. So I think this is a good example of the fact that she's not an idiot. She's not stupid. She's very smart. She's just manipulating these conversations and these issues. And for the ones that she doesn't need to manipulate because she doesn't need to hide, she's very, very clear and very obvious. So essentially, what we've heard from the DNC in the last couple of days of their convention has been that women feel oppressed. Women feel like their rights have been stripped away from them. Women feel like they are being controlled by white men and they want their rights back, plus some. They don't just want Roe v. Wade back, y'all. Harris's administration and everybody that's bought her off, she's bought off by, they don't just want Roe v. Wade back in. Y'all, they want a federal regulated law across all states to enforce any limits that any states have are to be removed. So they want to force any state that has any limit on abortions to be removed. Now, that is not publicly talked about knowledge. It's definitely been insinuated in the DNC. It's definitely been insinuated in past issues that she voted on as a senator. This is a huge thing. She voted for a federal regulation of abortions, opening up states to, enforcing them to have abortions that they limited on technically in their own state laws. She voted for these laws as a senator. She has been incredibly pro-abortion, incredibly pro-murder her whole career. So they're not just headed for Roe v. Wade being reinstated. We're not just going back. It's so ironic to me, y'all. Honestly, it's so ironic to me that they're all about like, we're not going back when, I mean, in some ways it's actually true. They're not going back. They're going forward in their, pro-murdering babies positioning, not just as a position, but as an action, as an actual thing that happens. I wouldn't be surprised if we see, you know, all sorts of legal stuff against pregnancy health care centers. One of the things that was really interesting in the conversation that y'all, it's in your description down below, the Michael Knowles interview with Bronte Remsick. One of the things that she kept saying over and over and over again, she's the pro-abortion activist. One of the things that she kept saying over and over again was, you're not a medical professional. Medical professionals are the only ones that can talk about this issue. It's essentially what she was saying over and over and over and over and over again. I am not surprised when I see things come out from medical professionals that suddenly, like, they're not just assumed to be correct, they're enforceable. They're in their laws, opinions, positions that are expected to be enforced. It's not just like, in other words, like, we're going to start seeing, oh, well, you're a pregnancy health center that is, you know, encouraging women not to murder their children. Well, that's untrue information, and now we're shutting you down because you're sending out untrue information. We're going to start seeing that kind of censorship in the pregnancy healthcare system as well. And we've seen that in Minnesota underneath Waltz. Absolutely, that's happened. So it's sort of like, this is what's coming. So this isn't just we're going back to Roe v. Wade. This is like beyond, y'all. So we've been an hour and a half now. So we're going to wind down a little bit, and we're going to just kind of, we've zoomed out and we've looked at all of these people, and then we've zoomed in and we've looked at their policies and position. And I want to zoom out again in kind of two ways. One is, how do we respond when it comes to starting to change this issue, not just politically and in the laws and policies that are being in place, because obviously that is being created by the politicians that we put into office, by our elected officials. And that's a huge, huge issue. And it's a huge thing that we need to be involved in and engaged in. You know, go look up your local officials that are running for office. If you haven't already, go look up your local officials that are running for office, that are pro-life, that are pro-sanctity and the freedom and rights of life that are in the Constitution, that are in the Declaration of Independence. Go look up those people, go check them out, go vote for them, go put signs in your yard for them, go talk to people about them, go help them, go volunteer. And that's not the only thing, y'all. That's one aspect of how we get to be involved in this issue, not just from we need to change the laws. It was a huge reason I was frustrated with the right to life movement in general when I was in high school, because it's like, we're sitting at these fancy banquets and, okay, right? Like, we're sitting at these fancy banquets and then what, you know? And now getting to be actually on the board of a right to life organization here locally, and then also just being really involved in, like, if there's things that I see in the gap, I'm going to go change them. Like, let's go change them instead of complaining about them and being passive and disconnected and apathetic. So there's absolutely an element of the political side that's very relevant and very important, because they're making a lot of the policies and decisions and laws that support us in doing our job and actually serving and supporting mothers, families, and children. And that is the second element here, which is, again, just like I've said earlier, and just I want to emphasize it even stronger here. It's like, if you say you're pro-life and you're not, your behavior is not coming from this place of care and love and support for families, for mothers and their children, whether that's through adoption, through foster care, through education, through service, through, you know, dropping off items that they may need, helping at your local pregnancy care center. There are so many ways that you can serve. There are so many ways that you can serve. And this is how we change. This is how we change one person's belief system about the value of life, their own life, and the life of their child. This is how we change the game, one person at a time. We have been zooming out too much, focusing on the things that we cannot change or the things that we have a very small influence in. And I'm not talking about your vote. Your vote is incredibly important and a huge opportunity for you to influence who gets to be in office and who doesn't. That is huge, right? And there is such an importance and a depth to serving in the spaces that you can influence, serving in the spaces where you can love and serve people, serving in the places where you can impact and influence someone's value of their own life and the life of their child. That is something that isn't just a give to that person, y'all. It is such a give even back. It comes back tenfold, 10 times what you could ever imagine giving to somebody. When you know you get to be the influence on somebody's life who maybe didn't value their life like they should, or maybe didn't value their child's life like they should, you get to be that person that has the privilege of serving and supporting and comforting them and being in their corner. I had that opportunity when I was very young. I stepped into an evening college class. My music teacher was a professor, and I got to speak to a room full of parents in a night class, right? They're taking their night class because that's when their kids are in bed. And I didn't realize it, but there was a woman in the room who had a child with cognitive issues, developmental issues, and she was really struggling with how to encourage him, how to support him, how to serve him. She was discouraged herself, frustrated, wondering, did she make the right decision? All of those things, right? All of those things come up. And because I was there sharing, being confident in who I was, being confident in the purpose of the way that I was created, the beauty of the way that I was created, having hands, having disabilities, having issues and struggles every day. She walked home, she walked away and got home with a totally different attitude and perspective about her child, and even about herself and her own role as mom of her child. And so I've had situations and experiences like this over and over again. That's one of many, but it is such a privilege to realize that the way that I show up, the way that I care for people, the way that I talk about this issue, the way that I lean in, be honest, be direct, and also be loving and thoughtful can influence somebody so much so that even a child that is already in the world has a totally different trajectory of life because mom chooses to show up in a way that says, you matter, I matter, we're going to matter together. We're going to live our lives like our vote matters, like our life matters, like we count. And we're going to show up and matter with everybody else too, right? That value, that sovereignty of life that only our creator gives us, and only he dictates and chooses what that means and the level that that means, and that it's equal across the board, y'all. That sanctity of life is a agreement that your creator has made with you. And the depth and the purpose and the life that you choose to live is ultimately about your relationship with him than it is about what anybody else says about you, what anybody else thinks, what anybody else's opinions are, what anybody else's policies are. And so when we think about this issue, and then when we ask ourselves, how am I going to approach this issue? How am I going to engage with this issue? Not as an issue itself, but as people, as women, as mothers, as fathers, as children. How do I approach it differently? How do I approach it more intently, more sincerely, more lovingly? How do I approach this issue in a way that really brings home the value and the sanctity of both mother and child? We're not saying as pro-lifers that it's only the child that matters. We're saying life matters. It should be respected. It should be protected, both mother and her child. And it's sad to me. In a lot of ways, it's sad to me that we don't have a candidate this year for president of the United States that is pro-life, but we have a lot of senators, we have a lot of congressmen and congresswomen, we have a lot of our local officials that are. And we are, right? You may not be. I understand that you may not be. You may rethink that as you're watching this, and grow to have that respect for your own life and for the life that you choose to bring into the world. But at an individual level, we have a responsibility and a privilege to protect and to respect life, however small and microscopic it is, and however tangible in the world it is that we see, that we engage with, that we pass by every single day is irrelevant. Life is life, and life matters. And life is sovereign, and there is sanctity, and there is a level of respect and admiration that we must have for the creator that created us. And so ultimately, I want to leave you not with depressing facts and information. We got to be real and raw and serious about what's going on and where these people stand. And so even though this is almost 2 hours, it's so relevant and so important. I'll be posting clips as well, but it's so relevant and so important that we understand where these people are coming from and what it would be like to have them as a president of the United States. What are the repercussions? But it's also really important to know, what is my responsibility? What is my role in this? How can I actually influence people? How can I actually serve women, serve children? And if you need some practical, like, I need to know in my state, in my local area, what can I do to serve? Please go find me on social media. Please go find me on Facebook, Instagram, X. Go find me somewhere and message me and say, hey, I live in this area. I want to engage. I want to serve. I want to support. I want to volunteer. I need help coming up with ideas for how to do that. Please come find me. I will help you. I will absolutely give you ideas that you may not have thought of yourself. And I want to be a part of the change. I don't want to be the only person, y'all, but I will be if I am. If I am the only person, then that's okay. Then that's me. But I know that I'm not the only person. There are many, many more that want to engage, that want to help, that want to serve mothers, that want to serve families, that want to serve children, their whole family, mother, father, and child. And so if that's you and you're just not sure where to start, please message me. Please, let's start a conversation. Let's get you linked in arm to arm with people who want to serve and respect and value life. And let's do that together. Talk about community. Let's do that together. So I trust that this conversation was helpful, that it was informative, that it was inspiring, that it evoked a desire to act. And if it did any of those things, I'd love to know. Comment down below. It's not for my ego. It's for you to realize this impacted me. And now I'm going to go create something with it. But it's really good to know when something hits home. It's really good to know when something really impacted you in a way that may change the actions you take, the choices that you make, and why, the underlying reason why. And if that's you, definitely comment down below. You can like this video. That communicates something. You definitely subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, because you get more videos and content that way. It's not a monetary thing. You get to support yourself and, seeing more content that you can engage with. And definitely share this video. If you were influenced or you were encouraged by what we were talking about, what we went through, the information that we went through, the deep dive on each of these candidates and where they stand on the abortion issue, on the sanctity of life, and what the practicality of where we get to go and what we get to act upon in our commitment and conviction of pro-life. If you've got somebody that needs to hear this message, go share it with them. I will see you tomorrow. We're going to do a whole fun little breakdown of, I think we'll probably dive into the DNC on Friday more in depth. Just a full wrap up and summary of everything that went down. But tomorrow we'll have some fun, juicy, awesome things. Tomorrow is kind of left to what is going to happen in the news that we get to talk about. I always leave some slots open in my videos because life is lifing and the news is newsing and there are lots of things happening in the world. So have a beautiful day and I will see you tomorrow on the stream. Bye.